Okay, I'm gonna take my mask off, so hopefully you can all hear me okay. If you have any questions at all today, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I will do my best to answer them for you. So today's session is all about the collection. We're going to talk about what we have. We're going to give you a tour of the basement. I'm sure several of you have spent some time in this part of the building before, but some of you may not have. I know we have a couple of newer volunteers with us. So we're going to give you the whole tour of what's going on. And I do have my helper Stephanie with me, who's going to pop on screen in a little bit and introduce herself as well. So, and don't mind my talking points here to make sure that I stay on task. So here in the collection at the Aurelia Museum, we have about 17,000 artifacts. Our oldest artifact is probably, we have two pieces of the fishing weirs, which date to as old as about 3,000 to 5,000 years old. So that's probably our oldest piece. And then we have a whole range of other objects besides that. So basically what we have in the collection is the physical representation of Aurelia's history. We have objects that represent some of the famous folks of Aurelia's history. We have, of course, objects from Gordon Lightfoot, the Gador family, Mazza de la Roche, Elizabeth Winwood, Franklin Carmichael, some of those famous names, and more besides that. We do have an art collection, and then what we are in right now is our history room. So we have a bit of a combination of things that do represent the two pillars of OMAH, the art and the history side of things. So if you're ever wondering, so as a volunteer, you may get folks asking you, oh, you work at OMAH? I have some stuff, how can I donate it? So that might be a question that you encounter. If that's the case, you can go on our website, and we do have a form there that folks can fill out. And the idea of the form is to kind of streamline our donation process. It prompts the donor with questions of where they got it from, the provenance of the artifact, its age, who it belonged to. Some things that sometimes get missed in the shuffle when they're handing something off to us directly. We're excited about it and they're excited about it. We forget to ask who it actually belonged to. So if you ever do get that question, that is where that would come up, is on our website. So that's just kind of off the top what we have. Where the items come from is predominantly the community. We get a lot of our objects in from donations. Some folks will bequeath things to us in their will. And we have purchased a couple of things, really not very many, but our big purchase, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is we did purchase Franklin Carmichael's paintings, Old Barnes Miners Bay. So once in a while we'll purchase things. Museums do deaccession things fairly regularly. We're in the process of doing that right now, which is the process of kind of tidying up your collection and getting rid of things that you no longer need. These would be things that are either in such bad shape we can't keep them anymore, or sometimes the provenance is unclear and we have to return them, or we have duplicates, or it's a space issue. Those are kind of the big reasons around deaccessioning. So sometimes we will get things from other museums that are clearing out their collection, and they vice versa will get things from us. So that is how we've ended up with what we have. So as we start today, we're going to take you on a tour all through the basement level of the Aurelia Museum of Art and History. We are in the collections room currently, and we're going to return here, but we're actually going to start off in the jail cells or the research room. So Steph, if you want to lead the way so that they can see, okay. We're going to head that way now. Okay. Let's put that. All right, after you. On this way. Now the open door that you're seeing at the end there is our kind of exhibit storage area in a way. It's all exhibit, I guess, for lack of a better term, display cases, glass, mounts, things like that. So that's what you're seeing through the open door there. We're going to head into our research. I'm actually going to take it over here and Stephanie's going to introduce herself to you.
Hi, can I take my mask off?
Go for it.
So my name is Stephanie. I am working as the collections assistant intern for the summer here. I'm a postgrad student. Now I am working on reorganizing the research materials we have down here in the library.
So can you talk about some of the stuff that you've been finding?
Yeah, so
some really cool stuff.
We've got a lot of history, so much Simcoe County really history down here. It's insane. The genealogy stuff that we've got, so many family stories to go through in both books and in files. I would like to point out what I've found so far. My favorite piece is a catalog. One second.
So if you've never been down to this part of the building before, this was the Aurelia Police Headquarters at one point in time. So that is why, in case you're wondering, that is why we have jail cells in the basement of the Aurelia Museum.
It makes for an interesting workspace, for sure.
It certainly does.
So this is my favorite that I found so far. Don't ask me why, but it is a 1908 Sears catalog. And it is probably going to not be accessible to the public, but it is a fascinating little look at history and how we used to shop. And I remember looking through the Sears catalog as a kid. I know now you can't do it anymore, but this is a really, really fascinating little piece.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have a OPP exhibit down here. It is going to be revamped at some point. We do have a couple of volunteers that have agreed to help us out with it. But we do have a little bit of OPP memorabilia, more books, of course. And actually, the sign here that you're seeing, that was painted for us by retired OPP officer Neil Hurtubise. So that's a really cool one. Now, in case you haven't been down here before, I want to show you my favorite part. And that is actually inside the jail cells here. So I'm sorry if this is repeat for some of you. When prisoners were being kept here, they were relieved of their possessions, but they were not relieved of their lighters. And so they would burn their names into the ceiling. So we have this wild guest book of individuals who spent the evening here before it was OMAH. And my favorite part about the names is the repetition of certain names, which I just think is brilliant. So if you come visit us when we're open again, you'll be able to see the research room and the jail cells in all their glory. Take that off for you. Thanks, Steph. Yeah. Yeah, so this room will be open to the public, especially as Stephanie mentioned for genealogy. Mm-hmm. We have great family records down here. Marcel Rousseau, who many of you probably know, is the most valuable source on some of that information here. And Fred Blair, volunteer committee member Fred Blair, is going to be our research room liaison. So you'll be able to book time with him once a week at the start at least, and he can help you find personal information on your family records or whatnot. So Fred's going to be taking charge on that part. So yeah, this is our research room. Stephanie is currently, as she said, revamping it. So we're very grateful to her for taking that on. And yeah, it'll be ready to go soon. Yeah. So we're gonna head back now to the collections room. So as we come into the collections room, I want to show you kind of the areas of the collection as it's laid out. Come on in. So we'll start at the west wall. So amazing volunteers, Daria, who is doing some research on the three organs, or two organs and a melodeon that we have in our collection. So this was one of the ones that she researched for us, which was just amazing. This organ had basically zero information on it whatsoever. And she was able to find a ton of info for us. So, you know, we do have many projects. If you have an area of interest, we have many projects. So you could, like Daria, find an area that interests you. So come on down. It's a little bit narrow. If you follow us on social media, we have today's What Is It Wednesday object tucked away here. Little sneak peek. So yeah, we do have some of our larger objects. Our canoe, of course, is quite unwieldy. But yeah, up here, this is the base of the clock tower here. So this is where other large objects are kept. And as you probably saw, we have some textiles as well. But it's an area of our building that needs a lot of love, but it's also in great shape. We have amazing stuff. So it is such a pleasure to be able to work down here with Aurelia's material culture. It's really cool. So we have this great rolling storage. This allows us to keep 17,000 artifacts in here in a smaller space. What's nice about this shelving is that it doesn't vibrate very much, so you're able to keep a lot of artifacts in here and they'll be safe, even though they're moving. So this section of the collection is a lot of textile storage. We have some wonderful old garments, an ODCBI leather jacket, lots of shoes, hats, amazing, amazing objects. So that's kind of that section of the collection. But I want to show you one of my favorite objects that we have down here. Now, I put gloves on. In case you're unfamiliar, one of the ways that we take care of our collection is by wearing gloves when we handle things. Our hands have oils in the skin, which sounds gross, but it's good. Otherwise, it's going to be cracked and dry and horrible. But we want to protect the artifacts from the oils in our skins. Now, certain objects would be pretty okay if you were to handle them without gloves on. But if you get an object like a shiny metal, something like a trophy, and you can picture it too when you take something like a spoon out of the silverware drawer, you can still see your fingerprint there even after you take your thumb away. And that's just refuse from the oils in your skin. Shiny metals, over time, you can see, if they haven't been well cared for, you can see all kinds of fingerprints on them. So that's why we wear gloves, to try and protect those objects. I'm going to show you my favorite artifact here. I'm just taking it out very carefully. So this was actually, I think, confirmed. This is the first artifact that I accessioned when I started at the Aurelia Museum. Oh gosh. So this is a lute, and this was brought in by a woman named Margaret, who when she was a child, she fled from a home that was being bombed in Nazi Germany. And the one item that she took with her when she fled was this lute. And she'd just gotten it for Christmas, the Christmas before, and it was her most prized possession. She was taking vocal lessons, and the lute was the accompanying instrument that she was learning. So she fled to the Netherlands with her family, and then had to flee another house that was being bombed for the second time in her life. So she was very funny when she brought it in, talking about how she had mixed feelings about the allies who kept destroying her house. But this is the loot that she brought with her. And when she left it with us, she patted it goodbye as she got up to leave, like, because this is an old friend to her. It's been a constant in her life, which was a life of turmoil at times. And she lives in Aurelia. She's just an Aurelia resident with this amazing story. So this is my favorite piece in the collection, and I wanted to show it to you while we were down here. It's beautiful. Put that back. Now, actually, that piece inspired one of our exhibits that's coming up, which is called Welcome Home to Aurelia. Some of you may have heard me ramble on about it before, but in case not, it is an exhibit based around 11 people who I interviewed and who told me their stories of immigrating to Aurelia. And we asked each participant the same roster of questions. Why did you leave your home? Why did you come to Canada? Why did you choose Aurelia? And what about Aurelia has made you stay? And it's become this really very rewarding project. But it all started with Margaret, because it just astounded me. This woman in Aurelia with this amazing story that nobody would know if we didn't ask, basically. So that basically will be opening up as soon as we're able to have people in the building again. So that is an upcoming exhibit. Now, another object that I wanted to show you is actually this shelf of objects right here. And I'm sure many of you recognize these already, but these are Otako mini toys. They are made by the Otako company out of the scrap metal offcuts from the mosquito bomber that the company was producing. And they made things from, I mean, they call them mini toys, but some of these are enormous. These trains, you can see have a handle on them so that a small child could sit here and steer with the handle while they pushed along with their feet. So not the miniest of mini toys. This is actually an internationally famous collector's item. We get comments and questions from people all the time asking about mini toys. And the next time you're able to visit the Aurelia Rec Center, check out the little diorama that we put up there on Otako mini toys and the history of that site as the Otako factory. So that is the section there. So let's head back out that way, Steph. All right, so in these next couple of sections, we have kind of an assortment of different historical objects. Sort of the main blocks here are sort of a collection of objects. There's some organization to them, but it's not textile or anything like that. But in this last section here, this is where we keep our archival materials, books, paperwork, receipts, anything like that. So you can follow me down here. So if you're ever working down here, we have our folders there, which are sorted by year. If we have a larger donation that's come in, like this McGarvey collection here, those will get their own section. We also have, a little further along, we have our historic. Here's actually did this. This was before me. But they wrapped every historical book. Sometimes, you know, old books, they smell and they fall apart and they deteriorate. And the acid-free paper just sort of protects them a little bit in their state. So that is what has been done here. It's beautiful. It ticks all the right boxes for my own personal kind of need to see things organized. This is very good for me. And Stephanie's nodding. Now, on what you're right, I suppose, we have some large object storage as well. We have just kind of a whole collection of large items here. So that is this section. And on the other side of this shelving unit, that continues. It's more of that large object storage. Okay. Just need one more. So around the corner here, we have, this has become kind of temporary storage. Stephanie's going to be spending a lot of time working on these items as well, which need to be rehoused in the collection, or some of them are new and need to be cataloged and accessioned. So we have down here, as I said, some more large object storage, some furniture pieces. This is another organ that Daria worked on for us. And then we actually have another volunteer project just back here. Sheila and Jane were working on the textile storage, and this is another area that makes me very happy. It's very satisfying. And that is, they re-rolled all of our textiles for us onto this beautiful shelving unit. They wrapped the outsides to keep the dust off, and then they labeled each one with a tag with the photo and with the number on the back side and a description. So that is, Sheila and Jane did the vast bulk of this project. So we have many, many volunteer projects, and this was one that was done really, really well. Behind me, I have a couple easels here. Just since we're here, this one is actually with a Franklin Carmichael easel, so that's really cool. Actually, that gives us a good lead in to our art storage room. Come on in. Pieces are kept, and they are very well sorted. One of our previous students actually went through all of these pieces and properly cataloged them and photographed every single one. So that is the art storage here. Now you can see that each shelf where there are pieces is being padded with this ethafoam to prevent any vibrations being damaging to the pieces. If they're leaning up against one another, we've tried to put ethafoam in between as well. And then if you're wondering about the plastic sheeting that's hanging down in front, this is to keep dust off of the artworks. So this room goes all the way around the center block. We have some really cool pieces in here. Some beautiful artworks. We have some Arthur Schilling pieces. Marta Brestovansky is another one. We have just beautiful works. Oh, and of course, our Carmichael, which if you've not seen it, that is it right there. Now it's in storage for the moment. Pieces need some time to be not on display, just so that we can make sure they're still in good shape. Sunlight can be very damaging to artifacts, and you've no doubt noticed this in your own home if you have artwork hanging up. It can fade over time. So it does come off display once in a while. But that will be back out on display for the Carmichael show next year, or at the end of this year. Yes. So that is our art room. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about how we take care of these artifacts. So gloves, obviously I've talked about, that's a big one. One other one, actually kind of an umbrella term, is preventative conservation. And that means taking care of your objects by preventing things from happening to them in the first place. It's kind of like how you might take vitamins to prevent having to go to the doctor later on. So the dust sheeting that you just saw, that is one. Dust can be really damaging to pieces like that. If you've ever seen an old painting that's very, very dark, that can be from dust or grime, or UV even as well can do that to an old coating. So we try to protect them as much as we possibly can. So another way that we do that, so we do have little pest traps around to try and keep the bugs down. We don't want bugs getting into any of our old objects and gnawing on them. That would not be ideal. So those are kind of the big ones. The climate control is another one. This room, we try to keep at a steady, stable temperature and humidity. Where artifacts can suffer is where the humidity is really going up and down. We do have one climate controlled exhibit space upstairs, and that is our Franklin Carmichael gallery, the dark blue gallery. So that is where we keep some of our more sensitive displays. Right now up there we have Jill Price's Unfurled, which has a lot of natural history pieces, including furs and wood, and those items are really sensitive. So that's why that exhibit is on in that specific gallery right now. So another way that actually there's kind of two more big ways that we take care of what we have. One is limiting access. So this room remains locked. The only people who have regular access to it are staff and volunteers. So actually the fact that you guys get to spend time down here is really, really cool, because just the regular public doesn't get that access. So that's pretty awesome. And that way we know kind of, we don't have crowds in here, and some things, you know, are quite small and can be just put into a pocket if they were open to the public. So that is why this room is a little bit more restricted. The last way that we really take care of our collection is through our database, which we use Past Perfect. I'm sure many of you have experience with this already. And Past Perfect tracks every artifact that we have. It gives it an accession number, or we give it an accession number and put that number into Past Perfect, and it tracks where that item is being housed. It also tracks things like if there are condition details. So if there's something that, so for example, we have a trophy that when you pick it up is actually in 3 separate parts, but it doesn't look like it. So Past Perfect would track things like, careful when you pick up that trophy because it's not as sturdy as it looks. So that's kind of how our database works. It keeps all of the information on the artifacts. It's huge for us. Kind of a criteria of success in a museum, overall, not just our museum, is that you should be able, the rule is 5 minutes. So you should be able to look up, you know, I'm looking for, I don't know, a doctor's bag. So I can look up doctor's bag in the database, and I should be able to find that exact bag in the collection in under 5 minutes. Vice versa, if I find this book in the collection, I should be able to get the accession number off of the book and find that record in the database in under 5 minutes. That's the mark of success. And as a humble brag, I will say, we're pretty good at that. I'm usually able to find things in under 5 minutes, so we're doing pretty well. But yeah, those are the big things. Now, collections follow standards. They are mandated by standards. So besides basically our own mandate says that we collect things that are relevant to Aurelia specifically. So when we talked about deaccessioning, one of the things that we do have to do sometimes in order to care for our collection is to deaccession items. And Stephanie is helping us out with that right now, actually picking up from one of our previous students who started that work for us. So in terms of care, basically this space has to be up to caring for objects so that they are visible to generations upon generations to come. We need these things to be kept safe so that they can be studied hundreds and hundreds of years from now and put on display all that time later. So that is kind of the work of this collection here. Now, this is an aside, but something that I think you guys might appreciate is that one of the foremost experts in the entire world on collections care, collections standards, artifact conservation, all of that work is a Canadian company called their CCI, the Canadian Conservation Institute. And I'm not kidding, they are like world renowned. So, and they're just out of Ottawa. So that's an aside, but I think it's very cool that a Canadian group is like the leader in that front. So Steph, I don't know if you want to set that down and give your arms a break. We're going up in here. Yeah. All right, so I know this is a lot of information. I hope I'm not overwhelming you guys or anything. I think this stuff is so cool, and I suspect that you guys do as well. So that's awesome. So what do we actually use our collection for? We of course take in items, but we don't want them to just sit on our shelves and never be viewed by anyone. Otherwise, what's the point? So we use our objects, of course, to go out on exhibition. We have them for research purposes. So we do get research requests or photo requests from people quite often, asking for a replica of a photograph or a copy, things like that. So we have researchers that will reach out to us, which is very cool. We use them in our programming a little bit. Some of these pieces have inspired programs. Tanya, for example, who is my partner upstairs, she is the arts programming coordinator, whereas I'm the history programming coordinator. Tanya uses some of the art pieces to inspire video tutorials that she does with classes and schools and seniors. So all kinds of folks have been learning about our collection through some of those programs, which is very cool. We also use the collection for social media engagement. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do use these pieces to display and engage with our public on social media. We have What Is It Wednesday, where we challenge you to identify a strange or unique object with little information about it. We have From the Vault Friday, which is often an art day, but sometimes a history day, where we bring you an amazing artifact from our collection to tell you a little bit about it. We do Throwback Thursdays, which Fred Blair has been doing an amazing job of for us. He has been writing these incredibly researched pieces on local families. So we do try to engage by getting our collections visible to the public. Another way that we do that is through digitization, which is a massive process. But that is trying to get our collection photographed or scanned or whatnot so that it is available to view online. Now, through our website, you can actually search our collection. It's under the research tab, and then search our collection is there. And you can actually have a limited access to Past Perfect through that feature. So if you're ever looking for an image of any sort, that's a great place to start. And that is possible because so much of our collection is now digital. However, we keep finding things. Stephanie in particular, through working on the library, actually this morning she found a really cool one, or maybe it was earlier than that. I discovered it this morning for the first time, that we have a whole collection of the Oracle ODCBI yearbooks. So those we must digitize because I think people will enjoy tagging themselves and their friends in those. I found my dad and my grandpa. So a lot of Aurelia history in those books especially. So digitization is a never-ending process at this point. But that is one possible project for volunteers. So that will lead me into now talking about some of those projects. I've already mentioned Daria doing the organs for us. I've mentioned Sheila and Jane, who re-rolled the textiles for us. Sheila and Jane were working on several other projects prior to that, which have been amazing. We have so many volunteers who are absolutely spectacular, including yourselves, who help us in different areas of the museum. And we've talked a little bit before, especially when we did the quarantine tour last month. We've talked a bit about some different projects around the museum that can be done, things like helping us pilot programs or test run programs, things like helping with exhibit openings and whatnot. But today I'm just going to talk about the collections specific programs. So, or projects rather. So digitization is a huge one. We have several collections that need to be scanned or photocopied, or scanned rather, into the database and preserved for us. We have certain things that are not up to being kept, they're deteriorating, and we need to scan them to preserve them. We have a lot of items here that need to be photographed. Either the photograph in the file is too grainy to be of any use, or the photograph on the item was missed. So those are a couple of really big ones. Stephanie, if you're working in the collection, you'll be running into her quite a lot. She's working on several things for us right now, which I've mentioned. A couple other things that we've been working on. We want to get an Aurelia Portraits program going, which the idea of that is to create a digital database of stories, basically. We want to interview folks who have these incredible stories, people like Margaret, who can tell us their story, and it'll just be available as a video series, basically, through our collection. So keep that in mind. We need people to film, we need people to interview, and we also need people to be the interviewees. So that will be a project coming up that it needs a chair, basically. So that's one for sure. We are also looking at creating a pandemic archive. We have a couple of pieces that have come in already that are going to be part of that archive, but this year is fairly unprecedented in many of our lifetimes, at least. So we are trying to document it as a museum. That's why we're here in a lot of ways. So that's something that needs a champion as well. So when Daria reached out, basically I said to her, whatever your interest is, we can find something for that interest. And that's how she got onto the organs. So the same goes for any of you. If you have an area of interest or of expertise, we can find a project that works to sort of scratch that itch for you, works to help you work on the things that you're interested in, and helps the museum as well. So if you want to volunteer in the collection, reach out to me. My email is historycoordinator@aureliamuseum.org, or you can reach out through the history committee and we will get you connected with some work down here. There's always projects. Actually, one that's recently come up is we know that some of our files need to be beefed up or fact checked. So if you have an area of expertise, you know, if it's historic furniture like Daria, then we may assign you all the historic furniture that we have, and you can go through it and research it and check it out for us. So tons of projects, whatever you're interested in, we can make it work for sure. So as we wrap up today, I wanted to show you a couple more of my favorite objects around the building. Around the collection. I've shown you a couple, but I figured I'd wrap up by showing you a few more. So one of them is actually right here, and that's this top hat. So this is a gentleman's top hat. It is made of beaver felt, and beaver fur, actually, this is a glove or mitt, actually looks typically like that. It's that light brown, very soft texture, and yet this is also the same animal. But the reason that it looks like this is because it's been treated. And this would have been treated. So if you may be familiar with this already, especially if you ever read or watched Alice in Wonderland. The reason that the Mad Hatter was mad is that he was creating hats, but he would use mercury to soften and darken the beaver fur. So that is how you end up with this, and also madness. So I think the old clothing that we have is fascinating. We do have quite a bit of it. if you're interested in that. Another piece that I love, I will show you down this way. Okay, so I mentioned the weirs. We actually do have a couple pieces of the weirs, like I said, and that's these here. So these, I think it's fair to say, are probably our oldest artifact in the collection. We have two pieces here. Now the weirs were in use for a long time. So the maximum age on the weirs is about 5,000 years old, but they do go several thousand years younger than that as well. So the age on these is kind of in that about 500 to 5,000 years old range. But it's cool. You can actually see, we think that the kind of bug-eaten ends would have been buried in the muck, and then the clean ends, or very smooth ends, probably were exposed to the water, and the water was keeping them nice and clean and smooth. So those are the weirs out of the Narrows, which is kind of unreal to be able to hold those now. All right, got it back out. We have the missile here, which I show it basically every opportunity that I have because I love it. That was one of the first objects I dealt with as well. But Marcel Rousseau dropped this off to me a little while ago, and this is the top of a bazooka that was made by Haywood Wakefield. So this is, it's like a desktop model so that you could show people what the inner mechanism looked like. So that's a really cool one. And I did a video about this actually. So if you're interested in finding out more about this piece, you can check that out if you haven't already seen it on our Facebook. Another amazing artifact that I want to show you is this one here. Oops. This is a backpack that was used by Franklin Carmichael. So this is what he used to transport his painting supplies in when he was painting on location out in the wilderness. Perhaps when he was out west of Sudbury painting Old Barnes Miners Bay. He would have walked out with this on his back. You'd see the leather straps there, pretty worn. Leather doesn't last as long as other materials. But he would carry his supplies in this. And this bag just kind of blows my mind. And maybe it's cheesy, but it's kind of, to me, the closest that we have right now to time travel, because I know who held this 100 years before I'm currently holding it. And that just, I don't know, that really gets me. I think that's so interesting. I'm going to put that back. Get that all packed away. Go back up. We have all kinds of really cool stuff. And I like going through here. So I do the What Is It Wednesday posts, and I have the best time going through here. If I'm in the building and it's quiet and I have a spare morning, I'll go through the collection, and there are so many things here that I do not know what they are, and I get to go through and look into them all and research them all and try to find ones that would be really good for What Is It Wednesday posts. So that's something you guys could even be helping me with if that is something that interests you. But down at the end here, we should have this wicked collection of medical items. Now, the shelves are actually quite empty right now because we have our medical history exhibit on display in the lobby right now, which is the history of medicine in Aurelia. So a lot of that is now displayed along with didactics about what it all is. But I mean, we have all of these items that have these great little containers with them. So lots of interesting items like that. But I really love the old pharmacy bottles from Ball's Drugstore there. So we have just, I mean, the most fascinating stuff. It is such a pleasure to be able to spend time down here looking through all of these things. We have the most incredible collection of objects. Go ahead, Steph. Okay. So we only have about 10 minutes left now. So if you guys have any questions at all, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I will do my best to answer them. I'm actually going to hop on my computer here. Oh no, I guess I'm not because I already signed it. So yeah, send them in to us if you have any questions at all or comments, and I will, as I said, do my best to answer them for you. As you think about your questions, I want to show you one last piece, just to give you a chance to take if you need it. So I'm not standing here staring at you. So we have these upright units for some of our smaller pieces. We have these great objects in here. We have this awesome fishing lure. We have these goggles that are so steampunky and amazing.
Those are pretty cool.
They are very cool. But the one that I wanted to show you is this one here. I was so in love with this little frame when I found it. So this is actually a little framed image of two soldiers, one of which is Lieutenant Dale McLeod Harvey. There's a lot of Harvey family history in town. And it unfortunately does not clarify which of the two gentlemen is Harvey and who the other man is. But I'm in awe of the little small frame and the old photo. So that is the last one I wanted to show you today. Is this gorgeous red velvet back. So yeah, I swear I find something new every time I'm down here, and I learn something new about Aurelia every time I'm down here. And I grew up here. I grew up here as a child of a history teacher, and I learn something new every day that I'm here. So it is such a pleasure to be able to be here and work here with you amazing volunteers who are so dedicated and so knowledgeable. So it is a real honor to be here with you guys and with folks like Stephanie too. So you'll get to meet Stephanie next time you're able to come into the building.
You got a question. Yeah.
Oh, we have a question. Perfect. Okay.
It says, for the Aurelia portrait, what type of stories are you interested in for the series? Okay, great question. We are interested in every story, anything and everything. It's funny, one of the ones that Nanette, our executive director, keeps coming back to is so she knows someone who's been a cook at Brewery Bay for the restaurant's entire existence. They've been a cook there, is my understanding of it. And they may not think that, maybe they don't think they have an interesting story, but the things that you must have seen as a cook at Brewery Bay. So really anything. If you want to nominate someone, it doesn't have to have famous Aurelia names in it. Just even if it's memories of dancing at the Pav on a Friday night and then going to the Shang for a cherry soda after the dance. I mean, anything that's Aurelia history, we are interested. So yeah, good question. When do you plan on starting working on the series?
Okay, this has been in the works for actually a long time. We've just been looking for a champion, basically. It's one of those things that needs someone who's kind of dedicated to it. So basically, as soon as we find someone who's willing to do a lot of that work for us, we would be willing to start. Now, it is a little bit awkward right now with COVID, although things are lifting. But we have found some success doing interviews over Zoom, actually, because Zoom does record. This is recording as well. You probably would have gotten a notice at the beginning. We're actually able to produce pretty decent video with Zoom, so that's an option as well if someone wanted to start right away. But yeah, we've had, so the history committee has nominated some folks that somebody in the works who's over 100 years old, who one of our history committee members wants to interview. We have another one who they fled from Nazi Germany as well. So we have a couple people who want to do some interviews like that. But yeah, if any of you are interested, that would be awesome. It'd be a great project.
What is the next training session you're planning to do?
Oh, thank you. I forgot to mention that. So we have, it's up in the air a little bit right now. It'll be at the end of July. We are trying to coordinate someone to do some Indigenous sensitivity training with the museum staff and volunteers. So that could be in July. But we're still trying to coordinate that. If it is not that one, then Tanya is going to be doing an art lesson, that'll be so fun. She's done a whole bunch and they're great. So that'll be a really good one. Okay.
So this was great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'll wrap it up there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm so grateful that you were able to join me today. It's been awesome meeting you all and getting to know and work with you all. So thanks very, very much for joining me today. We will send out more information on the next seminar when we have it confirmed. The date should be fairly stable. It's just a matter of which one it will be. If you have any questions that come up after today, you are more than welcome to email me or email Monica and she'll forward it to me. But yeah, I hope that we are able to have you guys back in the museum soon. And thank you very much. Thank you, Stephanie, as well. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. All right.